sends it around. Marner waiting. Connor McDavid scores! Connor McDavid for Canada! Yes, as well, but it's all off the face.
Good morning, Kansas City. This is New Day with SSJ on Sports Radio 810 WHB. It's Friday. Yeah, this week needs to end. Cold-ass week. It is finally Friday, February 21st, 2025. Stephen St. John here with the Drake Jason Justice filling in for Jake Gutierrez. Today on the show, we'll talk to Stan Weber. He'll be with us at 6:30 for 90 minutes. And then we'll check in with Jeff Penner and get the weekend forecast to see if it's going to warm up at all this weekend. And we'll look ahead, hopefully, to a much warmer week next week. So Jeff Penner will have all the info for us on the weather. Then we'll have our New Day Fast Break. We'll talk college basketball with Gabe DeArmond from PowerMizzou.com. We'll talk K-State with Jay Heydrich and KU with Nick Springer. Then our first conversation of the young baseball season with our insider, our baseball insider from ESPN, Buster Olney. Of course, Buster normally joins us on Thursday at 7 a.m., but in spring we need to be flexible, and we had Mike McFarland on yesterday in the 9 o'clock hour. He's normally on in the 8:35 slot on Friday, but Mac was on yesterday, and Buster is pinch hitting for Mike McFarland today at 8:35, and then moving forward, he'll be back in his 7 o'clock slot on Thursday mornings. But it'll be great to talk to Buster Olney and get his thoughts on the Royals' moves in the offseason and maybe what he thinks of the Royals compared to the other teams in the AL Central based on all the activity in the offseason. Then we'll chat with Tim Grunhard on the telephone. That'll be in the 9 o'clock hour. So a full show planned for you. Stan Weber, Jeff Penner, Gabe DeArmond, Jay Heydrich, Nick Springer, Buster Olney, Tim Grunhard, and you. You heard the highlight there of last night's matchup between the Team USA and Canada, and it was very exciting. Unfortunately, and man, I had a very strong feeling Canada was going to win, and if I'd have known what was good for me, I would have taken that strong feeling to DraftKings. But I do not bet against the United States. All right? It's not what I do. Not what I'm going to do around here. I don't bet against Mizzou. I don't bet against the Chiefs. I don't bet against the Royals. And I'll be damned if I bet against Team USA. I'm not going to do it. But I don't know. I just had this feeling that Canada was going to win last night. And unfortunately, they did 3-2 in overtime. So that ended with a thud for Team USA, as Connor McDavid got the winner in overtime. So, and you know what? It affected my night because I sat there and said, I'm going to watch the end of this. And my wife sat patiently because the new episode of Severance, even though it's scheduled to come out on Fridays, they release it early at 9 p.m. on Thursday nights. And she was very patient and waiting. And then I said, okay, this hockey game will be over pretty soon. And then she saw it was tied, and she said, this is going to go to some type of overtime, isn't it? I said, probably. And then it went to overtime, and I was watching it, and don't get me wrong, I was entertained. It was very exciting. It was very dramatic, but I wanted it to end because I felt the weight of her stare off to my right, Like, okay, all right, we both got to go to work tomorrow. Okay, all right now. Right now it's 9:30. Right now, that's 9:45. I'm like,
At what point will she be sainted?
Well, she is St. John, Susan St. John. It's already official. But I mean, I was like, I did not know this was going to go to overtime. I want to watch Severance too. Trust me. And so then, it's over. And she was watching it. She was into it. We were rooting for USA, and then that sucked. They lost. And so then we start watching Severance in about 10 or 15 minutes, and we both look at each other, and we're like, tap out. Got to go to bed. Too tired. Because Severance is the type of show that you can't just watch. You got to be locked in, because it's almost like watching a riddle playing out, and you got to look for the different clues, and you have to pay attention to the dialogue. And how before a show it always starts, previously on Severance. You have to pay real close attention, because they'll kind of bring back some of the things that are gonna relate to this episode, and it's deep, man. And so you can't half-ass it. It's not one of those things you be kind of watching, like, no, you got to be locked in and like, oh boy. And we just weren't. It was like 10 or 15 minutes into, like, okay, it's a lot of dialogue. The bed's calling. So, Friday Severance, like the rest of the world. Okay, we'll be all right. But Canada beats the United States. So. Boo! I'm not the biggest hockey fan in the world, but I watched it and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I watched a couple of the games in this Four Nations face-off, and so I should probably watch more hockey. I wish Kansas City had a hockey team. In the NHL, they have the Mavericks, and I've gone to the Mavericks. The Mavericks are very entertaining. By the way, you know what? That thought occurred to me. For people, there's a lot of people that they were on my timeline, like, hey, I don't watch hockey very much. This is really exciting. Or, hey, I only watch hockey for something like this or the Olympics and then the Stanley Cup playoffs. But hockey live is a lot different, and it's a lot of fun. Go see the Mavericks. I've gone out there, and like I've given tickets to my dad before, and even when I've taken my kids out, they don't know nothing about hockey, but they have a blast. And that's a lot of fun out there. So if you saw that and that caught your eye, like, you know what? I kind of like this. I kind of like the pace of this. I kind of like what I'm seeing here. Go out and give the Mavericks a chance. Go give them a shot. Because I think hockey is like, there's a couple of sports that there's just no way you're going to fully appreciate them by watching them on TV. I think hockey is one of them. I always tell people, shockingly, I'll bring boxing into this. Sitting ringside or sitting in the first 10 rows of a fight, way different than watching it on TV. It gives you a much different perspective. I'm sure you could say that about almost every sport, but there's really some sports that are much, much better in person, and I think hockey is one of them. And so give the Mavericks a chance and go out and give them your support. But I do wish we could get an NHL team. I'd be all over it. But Canada beats the United States. So that was a big letdown. But it was fun, and it was entertaining while it lasted. One football note that caught my eye. I read an article earlier this week that was written for ESPN.com. It was a think piece about all the different teams and what free agents might be the best fit for them. And when it came up to the Chiefs, It suggested that the Chiefs and Trey Smith would be parting ways. So a reasonable replacement for the Chiefs would be Dallas Cowboys guard Zach Martin, who's a veteran but who's very, very good. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. Usually, I think it's Matt Bowen who wrote it. Like, usually these guys at ESPN.com that write these articles talk to a lot of people, and maybe there's something there. Maybe he's heard through the grapevine that if the Chiefs can't get something done with Trey Smith, then they might pursue Zach Martin. I don't know. Well, put that idea in the ground and bury it, because Zach Martin, one of the most decorated offensive linemen in Dallas Cowboys history, opted to retire yesterday, so he won't be signing with the Chiefs if the Chiefs lose Trey Smith. That was kind of a, I think, out there suggestion, but we did talk about it earlier this week, so I thought I'd follow up on that. That's not going to happen. 34 years old, he met with Jerry Jones yesterday to inform him of his decision. 9-time Pro Bowl selection in 11 years of the Cowboys. And Stan, who's a huge Cowboys fan, I'm sure will comment on this. Only Hall of Famers Bob Lilly, Larry Allen, Mel Renfro, and Jason Witten, who's eligible for the Hall of Fame for the first time this season, have been named to more Pro Bowlers or Pro Bowls than Zach Martin for the Cowboys. And this is Pro Bowls are one thing, All Pro is where it's at. He was a first-team All-Pro pick 7 times. And that's tied for the most in Cowboys team history with Bob Lilly and Hall of Famer Randy White. So, and as far as guards all time in NFL history, he's tied with Hall of Famers Randall McDaniel and John Hanna for the most all-pro selections for guards all time in NFL history. The only player with more first-team all-pro selections since Martin entered the NFL in 2014 is retired Rams defensive tackle Aaron Donald. He had 8. Also, I think this is one of the craziest stats I've ever seen. Maybe not, but that's pretty wild. So in his career, he had 7 All-Pro nominations. Also in his career, he had 7 holding penalties. Accepted holding penalties. So in his career, he had the same number of All-Pro selections as he did accepted holding penalties. I think it's good. I think that's a Hall of Fame career. I don't know. So he's not playing for anyone next year. But he will be in the Hall of Fame. So there you have it. Got a big weekend. They're all big weekends now, baby, because we're February 21st. I mean, we had a conference call, a little planning session for the Miller Lite Fan Fest for the Big 12 tournament down at Power and Light. And so, I mean, we're here. So I don't need to tell. I said big weekend, but they're all big weekends now because there's just a handful of games left in the regular season in college basketball. And so, yes, this is a big weekend. Kansas is looking to bounce back from their 2 losses in the state of Utah, at Utah and at BYU. They should be fine because they host a not very good Oklahoma State team who will come to Lawrence with a 5-10 conference record and a 13-13 record overall. And so Kansas should bounce back with a win at home against Oklahoma State. Tip-off tomorrow at 3 o'clock right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Another team that is in desperate need of a victory, a lot more desperate than Kansas. Kansas is in the NCAA tournament. They've got postseason plans no matter what happens. Kansas State cannot say the same thing. They need wins. Some people suggest that they need to win out and do a little bit of good work in Kansas City to get into the NCAA tournament. I don't know. The bubble is kind of weak. And so if they win out, I don't know how much they got to do in Kansas City. But after losing at BYU and at Utah, it feels like they got to win out. The problem is they won't have a chance at a real good addition to the resume until the last game of the year. So for Kansas State, it's just you got to win. That's it. That's it, and that's all. So they don't play. They play against Arizona State in Manhattan. That takes place on Sunday. How about that? Sunday is Fun Day at 3 o'clock. So they don't play tomorrow. They play Sunday. And they'll take on Arizona State. That's a team they should beat. And then at UCF, home against Colorado, and at Cincy. At Cincy will be tough, but they already beat Cincy once, so they know they can do it. And then a chance with a nice addition to the resume will be the final game of the year as they host Iowa State. So you just got to win. And so that's, that when you're talking about NCAA tournament chances, yeah, you got to beat Arizona State in Manhattan. There's no question about that. As for Missouri, they look to capitalize on their big win over Alabama on Wednesday night, 110-98. But, man, I'm telling you, this game's going to be tricky. Do not look past this game if you're a Mizzou fan. They're playing at Arkansas. And Arkansas, they've been I would guess Arkansas fans are not happy with what they've seen from the first year under Coach John Calipari. Wildly disappointing because they're 15-11 overall, but 4-9 in the conference. They do have a lot of talent, and when they play well, they can pretty much hang with anyone. They won at Kentucky 89-79 a couple of weeks ago. They won at Texas 78-70, and you saw Mizzou. They stubbed their toes down in Texas. They didn't win at Texas. They played that Alabama team that was so impressive against Mizzou, and Mizzou had a great effort to beat, but they played Alabama and only lost by 4. And they're coming off on Wednesday night a game where they played at Auburn. No question, the number one team in the nation right now. And they had a lead late in the second half. It ended up getting away from them, and they lost by 7. But I went back and watched a good chunk of that game, and they were really good against Auburn. They went toe-to-toe with Auburn, in Auburn, the number one team in the nation, and they lost 67-60 because they are an underachieving team that's very, very talented. That they have to talk about Kansas State. Arkansas has to have some wins to get into the NCAA tournament. And when you look at what's left for them, Missouri is the best team that's left on their regular season schedule. It's a rivalry game. The teams don't like each other. It's at Arkansas. And if they can get this win over Missouri, then that would be a very big boost to their NCAA tournament chances. If they lose to Missouri, they're in some trouble. We'll see. But after that, they play Texas, they play at South Carolina, they play at Vanderbilt, but then they get another chance at a nice win at home against Mississippi State. But you're going up against a team that does have talent, that when they play their A game, they can hang with the best teams in the SEC, and you mix in desperation because they need this win. They really need this win to help build their NCAA tournament resume. So it ain't going to be easy. Now, Missouri took care of business against them the first time around, but again, that was at Mizzou Arena, and this year Mizzou's been fantastic at Mizzou Arena. But I've been really impressed with the way Mizzou's played on the road. They've been really good on the road. Their last road game, they won by double digits at Georgia. Before that, they gave Tennessee all they could handle, and that's a tough place to play. They only lost by 4. The game before that, they won at Mississippi State by, 26 points. They blew out Mississippi State. Now, the game before that was the not great performance at Texas, but they still had a lead with about 5 minutes left. And so they've been good. And before that was the win at number 5, Florida. So they've been really good on the road. And so I expect a highly competitive, fun basketball game that it ain't going to be easy for Mizzou to pull off this victory. But, man, if they do, then they host South Carolina. If they win at Arkansas and then you come home and you beat South Carolina, which very high chances they will, then you got to feel great about their chances of finishing in the top 4 and getting a double bye. Because after that, it's at Vandy. At Vandy, it'll be tricky. That's another game that'll be tricky, going up against a team that's got some talent, that needs a win, that's desperate to get a win and get into the NCAA tournament. Then they play at Oklahoma. Todd Lebo has declared the Oklahoma basketball season dead. And he knows Oklahoma basketball better than I do. And so would it be tough? Maybe, I don't know. All road games can be tricky, but I don't put it in the same category as at Arkansas and at Vanderbilt. And then Mizzou finishes the season at home, a marquee matchup against Kentucky. So it's a manageable schedule, but you still got to go on the road 3 times. They're 9-4. They're tied for 4th place right now with A&M. A&M has a tiebreaker, but Mizzou has the tiebreaker against the 2 teams ahead of them right now. Alabama at 10-3 and Florida at 10-3. Auburn's going to win it. They're 12-1 right now. So, and for people that thought I talked about Mizzou too much yesterday, I've got a small interview that I sent Drake with Dennis Gates on the Paul Feinbaum show. We could play. We play now? Drake said he didn't hear enough about Mizzou yesterday. He liked your. Hey, Dennis Gates doesn't. He's not like Eli Drinkwitz. He doesn't go on all these SEC shows all the time. You know, Dennis Gates kind of shies away from the spotlight, and so he's making his rounds though because people are paying attention to Mizzou basketball. Here's a clip of Dennis Gates on the Paul Feinbaum show yesterday.
And you've won a number this year. You're so close to March. You're playing really good basketball. I mean, I know you don't want to temper it, but so how do you make this turn over these next couple of weeks as we get ready for SEC and then March Madness?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, we got to stay healthy as a team. And usually at this juncture, you see teams, faltering that way. You want to stay healthy. You want to stay from any hurt, harm, danger. You want to continue to get better. I truly believe we have not peaked out yet. We have great basketball ahead of us, and our players have fallen in love with the process of preparation, but also player development. They have done a great job strength and conditioning. Our strength and conditioning coach, Sean Conity, has done a great job. Our athletic trainer, Chris Perrin, has done a great job. So it's all hands on deck in addition to our players who I say love each other, but it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to see it. These guys genuinely love each other, and they want to do it with each other. And that's the most important part that you have in this long season because teams have been together and going at this thing since June, and they can very well start to fracture because they've just been sitting in the same locker room, same gym, same bus, same plane, same hotel for a duration of time. So our guys, and we have a unique way of doing things, keeping it fresh, and obviously allowing them to get to know the best of each other and know that person to their left and right. And there's no other people they would rather do it with than the ones they are currently protecting on and off the court.
That was Dennis Gates on the Paul Feinbaum show talking about the success Missouri has had and what they need to do to continue the success into to finish the regular season, into the SEC tournament, and eventually the NCAA tournament. We'll take a break. It's Freaky Friday, February 21st. Let's spend it together right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Welcome back to New Day with SSJ on Sports Radio 810 WHB. It's Friday, February 21st, 2025. Stephen St. John and now Stan Weber joining us in studio. Stan, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I don't know how my voice is doing. It's tired of this cold weather.
Oh, is it bothering you?
I got just something at the bottom. It doesn't sound great, so I apologize for that. But
do you do anything for your voice since you're a broadcaster to keep?
No,
nothing?
I do not. Just been very lucky. I avoid some loud places like the night before the game.
Right.
You know, I started broadcasting when I was 25 years old. And sometimes, like I started with Mitch Holtis, the famous voice of the Chiefs.
Right.
The first 9 years I broadcast, I was with him.
You were putting the hammer down.
Well, it's just we would go to a road game, and a lot of times you'd say, like Aggieville is famous. So if we ate dinner, maybe eat dinner somewhere around Aggieville, and say, hey, let's just walk around, see what's going on here, and see what their Aggieville's like or whatever. Spend a half hour or something. Well, one time we went into a place, and the music's playing, and we're sitting around talking, and as you're trying to talk, you realize you're just yelling at each other. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And that next morning I woke up, I go, ooh, I feel something a little funny. I just held my breath and said, I think I'll be okay, and I was. But I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going someplace and yelling. Used to be people smoked. Think about this. 38 years ago is when I started broadcasting. There was a little more smoking then than there is now. So
a lot
you
of
went at a
broadcasters
place.
have that nice cigarette break in the commercials.
Well, that's true, too. They liked having that voice.
Right.
But I would just, if you went into a place and ate dinner and there was a lot of smoke, I would feel it at the bottom of my throat. So I had one time, Cotton Bowl. Remember we talked about Greg Sharp on your. Thanks for having me on Monday. I was in Utah and I was talking about Greg Sharp. And this next 6 years of my broadcasting, after Mitch, for 9 years, Mitch was a mentor and taught me how to broadcast, and he really helped Greg at the same time because Greg's just 1 year younger than I am. And then Greg became the voice of K-State. And at a Cotton Bowl one time, I go, oh, wait a second, my throat feels funny. So I took a ton of honey with me to the stadium. And every time we went, I didn't talk to anybody for the 2 hours I'm there before the game. Unless I was on the air, I'm not talking. And every time we went to break, I would squeeze a little honey in the bottom of my throat. And I don't know, that just made a difference. Like, it wasn't scratchy. And I made it through the whole day. Sounded fine, but I was concerned. Does that make sense? I monitor it, but I really don't do a lot for it. But honey on the Cotton Bowl, I think it was the 1996 season, maybe the warmest Cotton Bowl ever when K-State played against BYU. Steve Sarkisian was the quarterback. How about that?
Yeah, I started having problems with my throat probably 2 years ago, and before, like my kids had bought me for Father's Day, Entertainer's Secret throat spray because we had seen it. I was watching a documentary about when Journey replaced Steve Perry as for the Ariel, I think Pineda became the new lead singer, and so they were talking about what he did for his voice, and that's one of the things he used. They saw in the documentary. So maybe Dad would like that because he's always on the microphone. So I use that every now and again. But I had a nodule on my vocal cord that they found. Remember Drake? But my voice was bad. Like for a whole week, I could hardly talk, and I was really nervous that are they gonna have to have surgery or whatever else. So I went to specialist, and she said that she's going to prescribe a medication for acid reflux that she thought would help. And then she also gave me some other tips. But then she also said, maybe don't stack all these events together when I MC, it's a little bit different. I'm loud and everything else.
Yeah.
And so that helped. But the acid reflux medicine was like a gigantic game changer for me. And I haven't had the same problems.
Wow.
I take it every night, but it made a difference. But also, if you look in there, I got a little bottle of honey. Same thing, man.
Honey works.
And if it starts, I feel I go in, or I put it in my coffee, or just have some honey.
Do you use that spray still?
Yeah, you know what I'm out.
I've never heard of
that.
that.
It was more like Richie sings and he's in a band and everything else. I think it's more prevalent with singers, but still, I mean, it oils up the vocal cords. You do anything, Drake? You have a wonderful radio voice over the years.
A couple of years ago, maybe 10, 12 years ago, I bruised a vocal cord.
Oh, whoa, boy.
Because I was trying to eat while I was talking.
You shouldn't do that.
Yeah, and they got a bone that goes around. It's a round bone called the hyoid.
Yes.
And it got pushed out of the way and snapped back. And I had a bruised vocal cord.
That doesn't sound
They
fun
had to put
at all.
a camera up my nose, and it was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to be real careful for a couple of weeks, but I've been very fortunate.
Yeah.
I'm not very musical. Your family knows about this, but I think about the singers when I'm watching them in the live setting and how much they stress
Oh, yeah.
their vocal cords. And I just think about that because I know back when Kemper Arena was the arena, I knew the people who ran it, so I don't need to talk about that. I just know. And Garth Brooks would come there and do, 4 straight nights, one of those deals. And so I went to one of the concerts, and I was talking to the people who run it, and they were going the contract has very specific things. Like these musicians that come a lot of times, what kind of candy they're going to have in the room for the band.
Green M&Ms only.
Things like that. But his was no air conditioning on this half of the arena where he sang.
Right.
He wanted no air conditioning. Now, I don't know how that all worked out with the other half working and getting down there. It's a tricky little business here, but I just remember that little quirk saying he didn't think air conditioning was good for him to be singing in. And I thought those guys have to be so careful with what they do. There's no doubt about it. And MCing is so hard. When I MC stuff, that stresses my voice way more than broadcasting.
Yeah, I try to watch it a little bit.
Because the crowd gets loud, and you got to yell louder. And
like when I'm at Fan Fest for Big 12 tournament, that's going to be – because I'll be on stage all day the Wednesday and the Thursday, and but then Friday it's all right because I don't have a show the next day. But the Wednesday and Thursday I got to kind of watch it, and I can feel it coming on now, and so
that's about 2 weeks away, the tournament,
right?
Because it starts full bore on Tuesday. It's a whole new deal with 16 teams. If you haven't made your plans,
I know.
4 games on Tuesday, 4 games on Wednesday, 4 games on Thursday, and then finally the semifinals on Friday, 2 in the evening, and a championship game on Saturday. But it is a ton of games.
Oh, yeah, we also mentioned earlier we had a Zoom conference call, just a planning session for everything because it's different this year. Like you said, 4 games on Tuesday, and very likely that Kansas and Kansas State will both be in action on Wednesday.
Yeah,
so,
with the risk of Tuesday.
Right, yeah.
The bottom 8 teams in a 16-team conference are playing, and that's very important for K-State because K-State's hovering right around that spot. And before they lost 2 games in Utah, when they lost to BYU in Utah, you would have said they were on the front end of that bubble, and they'd be in the top 8 teams and not have to play Tuesday. Would get an advance to the Wednesday round. Kansas is slipping down into the Wednesday round when you wouldn't have thought it. You thought, start of the year, they ranked number 1 in the country, in the whole nation in the polls, and then you think they definitely would be in the top 4. It's not looking like Kansas is going to get to the top 4. So they'll start on Wednesday. But K-State has now slipped on the other side. And so K-State could finish 11th or with a little win streak could move up to 6th. I mean, there's such a bunch of teams right in the middle right now. But being the 8th by tiebreaker or whatever and the 9th is totally different. Because you're 8, you rest and watch while your 9th place team plays the 16th place team and then has to play you the next day.
It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll be down there with Sports Radio 810 WHB and the Miller Lite Fan Fest for the entire Big 12 tournament. In the first segment, I mentioned, I don't know if you heard me talking about this, but this article that I had referenced earlier in the week by ESPN analyst Matt Bowen, just a reminder of how worthless some of these articles can be at the beginning of free agency, where he went through the best fits for every NFL team as far as free agency. And he wrote, and this is on Tuesday, he wrote that he has Trey Smith fitting in with the Bears as far as what they need and their salary cap situation. And so with Trey Smith going to the Bears, he wrote, that leaves an open spot on the interior of the Kansas City front. And Zach Martin still brings the blend of size and mobility that coaches wanted the guard position. We see him as a good fit in free agency to replace Trey Smith. And even now, I don't know if they're going to spend the money necessary for that. Well, we find out 2 days later that he fits in with no one because he retires. But, man, I tell you what, and look, we don't focus – we focus on our guards because we watch the Chiefs and we know who, Trey Smith is, and we know who Joe Tooney is. But not everyone appreciates guard play all around the league, right? When I read all of his accomplishments and all of his all-pro selections and how it matches up with everyone else, I mean, that's unbelievable. Since he came into the league, the only guy that has more all-pro selections than him was Aaron Donald with 8, and he had 7 all-pro selections. And so he's going right to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I don't know what the rules are.
Are you surprised he's retiring 34 years old? Still playing at a high level?
He got injured last year.
So that's not a surprise?
He got injured last year and didn't finish the year out. So maybe he thinks his body's breaking down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. What my point is there a chance he could come back? Like, could he retire and then the Chiefs call him on August 15th and say, hey, you think you can get in shape and we might have a spot for you over here. We drafted a rookie in his guard position, but you know what? I bet you could be ready by week 2 or 3. Would you want to come back on a better contract? Would you like to win a playoff game? You don't do that in Dallas.
Wow.
Would you like to come to Kansas City and do that? So I just wonder, because he's young enough to go.
He had the same number of accepted holding penalties as first-team All-Pro selections in his career.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Right? That's wild. But he
handled himself well. He handled himself well the whole time he was a Dallas Cowboy, and so he'll be on to the Hall of Fame.
Do you have faith that if Trey Smith does move on, that Sua Mataia could step in?
I think it's likely that would make sense, and I think he could have some success, but I think there'll be a learning curve about when it happens. When Sua Mataia was drafted, my thought was you don't put left tackles in as rookies and have success. It's going to take a while, probably more than a year. So I don't even write off what his final position is on this thing. I haven't given up on him being a tackle. Maybe he can be a right tackle. Maybe he can be a left tackle. I don't give up on these guys. It takes a while. And the NFL left tackle is completely different than the BYU left tackle, okay? These guys are elite, unbelievable in their moves, strong. The leverage points is speed. But, yeah, I think he can move into guard. We saw the Philadelphia Eagles do that. Take a first-round pick, say, well, you're not a tackle, but would you give it a shot on the inside? And if you're big and strong and you're adaptable, there's so much more room for error. There really is. You see the linebackers so much more easily on a blitz coming up the middle. If you have a surprise guy coming at you, if you got someone lined up right there over your nose or over the center, you got help. The center is going to stick his arm out and have some leverage and help you out. You get to work 2 guards in the center together, and the blitzes usually come from up the middle. If it's a free safety, if it's a linebacker firing from middle linebacker, it's a lot easier. Where the left tackle has all this room to cover, and if a guy comes off the edge like McDuffie, you're like, oh, crap. Who's going to help you? Where are you going to – how did you see him? You thought you're going to block a guy defensive end. Instead, he loops inside, and they bring a blitz off the edge, and now you got to adjust and move out. I mean, there's so many complications at tackle that you don't have as a guard, and you can start saying, hey, when you're young, you don't want him to play tentatively, right? What does Tim Grunhart say? If you hesitate,
right,
you're dead, right? How many times have he said that? If you're a split second slow on anything, indecisive, you're dead. Well, to guard, he can just say, you know what? Quit worrying about all the assignments you have. Quit worrying about what could go wrong. Just maul people. They're not going to call holding. We want to see him call holding on you a couple times. Maul people. And that's what the Eagles started doing at the guard position, right? He just went in there, started mauling people. And you gain some confidence when you do that. So I think you simplify the brain, you have help, and you get the development. So, yeah, I think he can move into the guard. I think it's most probable they go that way. But I wouldn't give up on him as even being a solution at the tackle position.
We have Stan Weber in studio. We'll be right back after this on WHB. Welcome back to New Day with SSJ on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Did you watch the USA Canada hockey?
Yes,
game
I
last
did.
night? What
Yes,
did you
I
think?
did.
Were you entertained by it? Did you get caught up in it? A lot of people have been bitten by the hockey bug now.
I wanted to get bitten by the hockey bug, and I've had it happen before. I like the NHL playoffs, the Stanley Cup Finals, and I like the game generally. And I heard that this was the big deal after the previous game. I didn't know anything about it. I have to say, I knew nothing about the four countries, that it was the NHL All-Star weekend, whatever, week or two.
I didn't know it existed 2 weeks ago, and I was all in last night. So that's
Exactly. So I definitely said, okay, college basketball stepped aside on Tuesday and Wednesday. So I was excited about this, and I know how much it means international competition to Canada, and the U.S. was fired up as well. So yeah, I was ready to roll to watch it, and yes, so I enjoyed it. I watched the whole thing. It didn't give me as much as excitement as I wanted, I have to say, but I think that it was a missed opportunity because the Canadian focus is going to be their period. It's their sport. They love it, and they're the best internationally. United States beating Canada in Canada the other day after, and you got to say this, Canada's fans, the fans in the arena, booed the national anthem.
right.
That created a little bit of fire. And then in the first 9 seconds, they started all fighting. And these guys they're all in the NHL. These are all NHL players. And so they're on teams together, and yet they're opposite teams because America's playing against Canada. And all of a sudden they start fighting, and America won. So the winner of this game was the champion. So I that level of anticipation really was cool. And I think if America would have won, it would have burst on another day or two of discussion. And it might be like an Olympics or something, or a World Cup is the soccer, where a few more people or thousands of more people say I won it. I don't know if Americans go, oh, darn, we lost.
It seems like they were
and
even
fade
though.
away.
Like a lot of the players were saying, like
Oh,
we've
it's
shown
dead even.
we're
Yeah, especially overtime. If you just go watch the overtime, that was the best, or worst if you don't like losing. But the chances the Americans had in overtime, I think there were 3 chances they should have won, and the goalie just made outrageously great plays for Canada.
like you said. I got a buddy that lives in St. Louis, and so and now he's a Blues fan and so like he was all fired up because Jordan Bennington, the goaltender, made those saves. And I was telling him, well, who the hell are you rooting for here? That's why I like him, because he's
one of our
Blues,
players,
you
yeah.
know? I said, but Canada. Was like, what are you? He's I'm just watching it. Because why do I have to pick?
It's like Texas Tech.
USA.
If Texas Tech played Mizzou in an
Right.
All-Star game and Patrick was with Texas Tech, you'd
Oh wow,
you'd love him.
I would love Patrick Mahomes no matter who he plays.
That's what I'm saying.
I know, but I get
Their goalie is
right.
The Blues goalie.
But like weird, because like St. Louis people are like,
Oh, it was the weirdest thing about how
no.
I'm not into it enough until I heard the announcers talking and saying, oh, like he plays for a Canadian team in the NHL, but he's the one who's firing it for the U.S. more than anybody and wanting to fight. It was like, this is so weird.
Well, I watched it Saturday and I watched it last night.
So you did watch Saturday?
Yeah.
Oh,
and so-
congratulations.
yeah. So
I was busy on Saturday.
they got me.
That's good.
You know what I mean? I mean, because I'm not seeking out. Like, I'll watch Stanley Cup playoffs. I'll definitely watch the Olympics, but it got me, and I had a lot of different things. You had a lot of choices on Saturday. You had college basketball. You had whatever that was from NBA All-Star Weekend, which that thing's collapsed into being unwatchable. And so then the hockey. This is way better. So that got me.
I just heard about it after that.
Yeah.
And like many Americans go, okay, I'm going to watch on Thursday
Yeah, 'cause
night now.
But I was on, because I was looking at X. I go, they're fighting. They boo the national anthem. I said, wait a minute. And I get on there and so, all right. And then I turn it on. So it was, I was thoroughly entertained.
Yeah, I thought the crowd would be, they tried once in a while, but I thought they would rock the house a little bit more. But there were a number of Canadian fans there. So what was the split, do you think? 75-25?
Probably. There's a lot of the U.S. fans look like dressed as Ben Franklin. I appreciated that. I like the cosplay that I saw last night. But that was fun.
It was good hockey. I watched it, and it's the only overtime in any sport that I feel comfortable with, okay? I guess baseball, before they put a guy on second base, I guess
That irritates me.
extra innings are okay in baseball.
Right.
But no football. College football is better than the pros, but there's no kicking game. There's nothing like hockey because no team has an advantage. When you drop the puck, it's like first team to score wins, got it, and it's very fair. Everyone's going to get a chance.
No, that was super exciting last night. Unfortunately, it did not go.
What would be the
USA's
difference if
way.
America would have won? What would be the enthusiasm around the country on not just this show, but all the sports shows? Wouldn't it be just a little extra juice of
There
something?
would be. I think it would be more of like a huge negative reaction in Canada. Like, I can't believe, right? You know what I mean? But I think people would be excited, but then they kind of move on. But I think
They would move on,
Yeah.
but it may last a day or two,
Right.
or into they start playing regular season games on Saturday. Like if you're in a city in America where your hockey team draws about 3/4 of the arena, don't you think there'd be an extra few thousand fans just
that's an interesting question.
to be there and act like it's a carryover from the other game? And if the U.S. would have won, and you're down in Tampa or Columbus, Ohio, or wherever, and you go to the game and you're like, let's do some USA cheers. Don't you think that would happen? There'd be a little more enthusiasm.
Yeah. That and I'm curious.
I think
like,
that's what's missing. Is
Yeah.
now it fades away completely. This morning they go, yeah, I watched it. A few kids will be, and there'll be a kid who lives in Texas who never knew about hockey who goes ahead and plays. A Patrick Mahomes down there, like, hey, I want to play hockey. Yeah, that'll happen. But I thought there'd be a little surge, at least for the weekend, back to the NHL season, if America would have won.
I do think I don't know what player it was, but one of them they asked like, what did this mean? What's your team? He goes, in referencing Team USA, he goes, now we expect to win in these international competitions. We expect to win. We showed that we're, level with Canada. So
And maybe this will help the ratings in the Olympics, because the Olympics are next year.
I look forward to that.
And how many people really say, I've got to watch the U.S. play the Olympic Games? I don't know. There's so much on, right, in a short period of time. So in the Winter Olympics, is it a must-see? It was back in 1980.
I love the Olympics.
When Al Michaels,
and this does make me more excited to watch it.
Yeah, I think you'll watch the U.S. team because you also got introduced to some of the guys, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because if you watch a NHL game, there's guys from Russia, Finland, Canada, America, and I can't keep track of where these guys came from because it's not the subject of the day. I mean, did you know the St. Louis goalkeeper was from Canada?
Well, because my phone was blowing up, so yes, for my buddy.
Yeah, but did you know that 3 weeks ago?
Probably not.
If you watched a Blues game.
I knew his name, but no. Yeah, I mean.
But now the American players, you got a taste of what they. So I think this will help next year.
I'm a fan of the Kachucks. We'll take a break back after this on WHB.